Guys, welcome to the channel. Today we're working on a 1997 Mazda Miata. We're taking some coilovers, throwing them on the car. We're going to be fixing up the brakes in the future as well as a couple other things, but today's video is all going to be based on the coilovers and how to install them properly on your Miata. Obviously, for an install like this, you are going to need different tools. So from the top to the bottom, we're going to go over every single tool you need, what size, where it's placed, just to make your life a lot easier. So with an older car like this, obviously things will be rusty. You got to be careful. I wouldn't just start hitting things with guns, hitting things with tools just yet. So we're going to take this from Kimbo Midwest. It's amazing. It basically helps break down all the old rust. Let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes and then start on the car. And that's what we're gonna do first. We're gonna tack all the bolts, make sure everything's soaked through, let it sit for a little while, and then we'll proceed. All right, now we're gonna let it sit. We'll start hitting the bolts, make sure everything can break loose easily without breaking anything. At the same time, working on the front, make sure you take off your back wheels too. You know that you're gonna end up throwing coilovers in the rear, so you may as well hit everything early with whatever type of PB blast you have, rust repellent. That way it has time to soak through while you're working on the front. So in order to do the fronts, there's a few tools that we are gonna need. We're gonna start with the end links up front. For that, you're gonna need a 14mm socket with a ratchet, and you're gonna need a wrench. Go to the bottom shock after that, you're gonna need a 17mm socket, ratchet, and then definitely a wrench for the back side of that bolt. And then for the top hat, you're gonna need a 14mm socket and ratchet. To make this job a little bit easier, we're gonna be taking a pry bar to pop that shock back out, as well as an extra hand/foot, because a hand's definitely gonna be needed in this. To start now, we're gonna take off the end links. The end link, the top bolt on it is a 14, as well as a 14 on the back side. We have a 90-degree impact gun. If you can get something like this, it would definitely help in these tighter little areas. A 14mm wrench as well. That way we can hold it on the back, zip off the front side, take the thing out, and move on to the next spot. Okay, one bolt off. Little side note, obviously you want to stay as organized as possible and remembering where each bolt goes. We just took off the 14mm nut and bolt from the end link, so I'm going to take that, put them back together, put it in something that you have to organize it, maybe even label them if you have to, and move on to the next spot. Now with the top bolt of the end link off, we are going to take off the bottom bolt to give us a little bit more clearance later on. Bolt out, and with those two bolts being out, the end link comes out completely. If at this point you see that your end link is bad, your bushings are bad, replace it. When we go to put it back in, we'll be putting in the new one. With this bushing right here, it does have a press-in fitting as well as the rubber outside. The press-in fitting looks all right, maybe use a little bit of grease after. The rubber doesn't look too bad. It is dry rotting a little bit. This is something I'd consider replacing, definitely, if not now, soon in the future. So sometimes you do have to maneuver the brake in order to get to other bolts. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the key in the ignition, that way I can freely move the wheel itself, get access to different bolts, and then whenever I don't need it, pull out the key so you're not draining your battery. So the next bolt that we have to take out, you are gonna have to move your brake caliper just so you can get to it, as you can see like this. So it's gonna be this bottom bolt right here. It's a 17 on the front and a 17 on the back. So make sure you have a good impact gun or a good ratchet set that you have a little bit of torque leverage on so you can break that loose, because that one's definitely gonna be tight. All right, as you can see, that one's definitely tight. I'm gonna get a ratchet with a breaker bar, break that loose, and then finish it off with the impact gun. All right, guys, so I got a breaker bar on here right now with an extension. Be really careful, obviously. When there's that much tension, things can break, so take your time doing it. I'm gonna see if I can get it to rotate to start, like that. And I can get that bolt off. Now it's spinning on the back side. I can throw the gun on it, zip it off, we're good to go. Got that bolt right off. It's also a washer. And we can take this, we can put a gun on this side with possibly a little bit of pressure on the back, take that bolt right out. Good, she's spinning freely. Okay, guys, so we got that bottom bolt out. Same thing like the last one, we're gonna put it back together. So we remember where it goes, being the washer, the lock washer on the outside with the nut, and the bolt on the inside. We're gonna be moving on to the next portion. So with everything below being done, we do need to remove the top two bolts in order to get to the next part. Two bolts up top, both being 14mm. We're gonna take this, slowly break it loose on one. Now that they're loose, we can double check everything underneath, make sure everything's safe to proceed, take off those 2 bolts, and then move on to the next part. From here, you're definitely gonna need a friend for this part. You can take off a couple other bolts, but to avoid that, grab yourself a breaker bar, have somebody put their foot either on the brake or the control arm to push down. The goal is to have this thing to drop enough and also kick the bottom of the shock backwards in order to finagle it forward, pull it out, and then the install of the coilover is much easier. Alright, Sean, you want to press down? Yep, a little bit more. Perfect. Now we need to press down a lot on your end, Sean.
Yep.
Before we go on to finishing this side, you do have to take off the other side front wheel as well as the end link completely. That way the sway bar has more leave to it, and we can adjust on this side the position on the control arm to give us a little bit more distance down in order to take out this shock. Okay. So obviously that was a little bit awkward, but with a friend, a pry bar, as long as you can get those top 2 bolts to drop all the way down and the little metal piece on the top hat, it will come out eventually. Definitely does a little bit of pulling. Could another bolt being out help? Sure, but trying to get this done as fast as we can and efficiently without damaging the vehicle, this definitely is an option. So now we're taking our coilovers. We're gonna be installing them. First up, get them in the bottom piece. Push that down a bit. We're gonna line it up on the bottom first, and then making sure that they go into the holes up top. Sean, you can release. Okay, we're gonna take our top 2 bolts, install those next. We'll keep moving. It's okay to just get these hand tight for now. To start, now in reverse, we're gonna start with our bottom bolt. So we're gonna go back to our tray, leave our 2 end link bolts. We're gonna do that after we complete the other side. So with a little bit of push, we can reline this up. Feed that bolt right in. Sometimes you gotta shake it. Tap it back into position. This one, the bolt goes in with no washer. You're gonna take the lock washer next and the nut on the back side. Put those in again, just hand tight for now. Now that all the bolts are in, again, not installing the end link yet, we're gonna be tightening up everything with a ratchet. I definitely wouldn't recommend using a gun. Going back down to the bottom now. End link's still not installed. We are tightening the bottom bolt. We're gonna be doing this one by hand so we don't break anything. Nice and tight. Now we're going to be moving on to the front right to finish that side. Once we're done with the front right, we will be reinstalling our end links and then moving ourselves to the rear. For tools for the rear, what you're going to need today, for the trunk parts, if they are still installed, just a 10mm socket ratchet. For the end link, you're going to need a 14mm socket ratchet and a wrench. Bottom rear shock bolt, you're going to need 17mm socket and ratchet. And the top hat, you're going to need a 14mm socket and ratchet as well. And I'd also recommend an extension in this part of the install. See you guys soon. If you guys like this video, find this helpful, please hit that like button, subscribe, hit the bell notifications. We're going to be doing more how-to videos on a car like this, even on a car like this. We have a bunch of toys. I think you guys would really enjoy our content, so please hit that thumbs up, subscribe, continue on this video, and if you have questions or want to see different videos, let us know. We'd love to help you guys out. Guys, back to the video. Starting in the trunk, just to give us a head start, there are a few 10mm back here. Some people have some panels that are blocking things, some have them removed. So in this exact trunk, we do have some 10mm laying around that we do need to remove in order to get to the shock tower bolts. Just like that, this panel is removed, and we have now access to our 2 bolts in the top that we're gonna have to access later on. Alright guys, so we are gonna be starting with the same exact thing in the rear. The end link, it is a 14 again, front side and back side. So grab your ratchet, your wrench as well, or impact gun. Throw a tool on the back side to hold it, tool on the front side, and she's on there good. This one might break, we'll find out. This is one long bolt. It's off. We're gonna take any tool that we can find that looks like a pick and anything that looks like a hammer and use it. Punch out that. Perfect. Next bolt is gonna be the bottom bolt on the shock, which is a 17. Sometimes they're a little bit difficult to get to. Sometimes you gotta use a thin wall socket, just like this. Just fits in there. As you can tell, it's pretty snug. This one's probably gonna be tight. We're gonna try it with the gun to start, and if not, we'll move over to the breaker bar. That was easy. Just like that, she's out. Came out with a lock washer, so make sure that you put that back on so when we reinstall it, it's still there. The bottom two shock bolts are located in a really odd spot, so I use a Shorty 14 with an extension as well as a ratchet. If you have a 90-degree gun, you might be able to make it work, but this is where a ratchet definitely is going to be coming in handy. Working on the last bolt right now up top. Again, these are pretty awkward to get to, so take your time, be patient. And once this is out, we'll pull out the suspension and get the new suspension in. For this next part, guys, we're gonna be having somebody step on the brake in order to compress the rest of the suspension pieces so I can take the coil, take it out, and install a new one. Get us a little bit more and start rotating this piece out just like that. Jimbo, jump a little bit and she'll pop right out. Yep, 1, 2, 3, and we're out. Just like that, guys. All right, now that our rear shock is out, we're taking our coil, whatever one you have to replace it, and we're reinstalling it, so everything backwards. We're gonna get this up, we're gonna get the top bolts on, and then focus on the bottom, and the rear's all set. 1 and 2, and we're gonna have somebody up top now, hand tighten these top 2 bolts. Now we're gonna be taking a jack. Because this shock is shorter, you do need to jack it up just a bit to line up this bottom hole. Feed this bolt through. So get your 17 on here. Tighten this up. Take your time doing it as it is a longer bolt. Nice and snug. Here, we can drop down our jack a little bit. We can move on to the end link. All right, so the last thing to do on this side is install the end link. Just like we did on the front, in order to do that, you have to take off the other side wheel on the rear, pop off the end link bolt to move back over to this side. Like I said, the end link's always the first thing you take off and the last thing you reinstall, which is what we're doing right now. Just like that. Get our nut on there, and we're gonna be tightening it up by hand. All right, guys, so now that it's snug, we can move on to the other side. Like I said, you guys saw everything. If you have any questions on that, let us know. But the other side is identical to this side. We'll always do the end links first and then end with the end links. Get your wheels back on there. Make sure your preloads are tight. And from there, set up your height. You're good to drive.